This is real money, $100 trillion, and it's worth $3 on eBay. In 2008, this bill couldn't buy you a loaf of bread in Zimbabwe. I'm going to tell you the story of how an entire country's money became worthless in less than a decade, how a teacher's monthly salary went from buying a car to buying 3 eggs, how people became trillionaires overnight and starved anyway. This is the story of the fastest destruction of money in modern history, and it could happen again. Let me take you back to 1980. Zimbabwe just gained independence from British colonial rule. The country is called the breadbasket of Africa. The economy is booming. They're exporting food to neighboring countries. Tourism is thriving. Victoria Falls is one of the natural wonders of the world. The Zimbabwe dollar is worth more than the US dollar. Teachers, nurses, and factory workers are building middle-class lives. Kids are going to school. Hospitals have medicine. This is a success story. Fast forward to 2008. That same teacher can't afford to take the bus to work. Those hospitals have no medicine. That thriving economy, dead. What happened in those 28 years is one of the most catastrophic economic collapses in human history. And it all started with one decision: the land reform disaster. In 2000, Zimbabwe's president, Robert Mugabe, had a problem. He was losing popularity. He needed a political win. So he announced land reform. Here's what that meant. The government would seize farms owned by white Zimbabweans, descendants of colonial settlers, and redistribute them to black Zimbabweans. On paper, this sounds like justice, correcting colonial wrongs. But here's what actually happened. These commercial farms weren't given to experienced farmers. They were given to political allies, government officials, and military commanders who had no idea how to farm. Zimbabwe had about 4,500 large-scale commercial farms producing most of the country's food. Within 2 years, most of them stopped producing. Imagine if half the farms in your country just stopped working. The country that was feeding its neighbors suddenly couldn't feed itself. Food production collapsed by 60%. Exports vanished. Foreign currency stopped flowing in, and the government's tax revenue, which came from those farms, disappeared. But the government still had bills to pay: salaries, military, infrastructure. So they made a decision that would doom the entire nation. They decided to simply print more money. Here's how hyperinflation works. Pay attention, because this pattern has destroyed currencies throughout history. Step 1. Government needs money, but has no tax revenue. Step 2. Instead of raising taxes or cutting spending, they print money. Step 3. More money in circulation means each dollar is worth less. Step 4. Prices go up. People need more money to buy the same stuff. Step 5. Government prints even more money to pay for the rising prices. See the death spiral? In Zimbabwe, this spiral accelerated fast. In 2006, inflation was 1,000% per year. Bad, but manageable. In 2007, inflation hit 50,000% per year. By November 2008, inflation reached 79.6 billion% per month. Let me put that in perspective. Prices were doubling every 24.7 hours. Every single day, your money lost half its value. Life in the hyperinflation zone. Picture this. You're a teacher in Harare, Zimbabwe's capital, in 2008. You wake up on Monday morning. A loaf of bread costs 1 million Zimbabwe dollars. You go to work, teach your students all day. You finish work at 4 p.m. and go to the store. That same loaf of bread now costs $1.5 million. By Friday, it costs 10 million. This isn't a story. This is what actually happened. People would rush to spend money the instant they received it because waiting even a few hours meant it would be worth less. Employers started paying workers 3 times a day so they could run out and buy food before prices changed. Supermarkets had employees walking around with price tag guns, constantly updating prices. Sometimes they'd change prices while you were shopping. You'd put bread in your cart for $2 million, and by the time you got to checkout, it cost $3 million. But here's where it gets really insane. The government kept printing bigger bills to keep up with inflation. First, they printed a $100,000 bill, then $500,000, then $1 million, then $10 million, then $100 million, then $1 billion, then $10 billion, then $100 billion, and finally, $100 trillion. This bill was printed in January 2009. By March 2009, It couldn't buy a bus ticket. Think about that. $100 trillion. Worthless. Let me tell you about someone named Margaret. Margaret was a retired teacher. She'd worked for 35 years and saved for retirement. She had 5 million Zimbabwe dollars in the bank in 2006. That was enough to live comfortably for years. By 2008, that $5 million could buy her 3 eggs. 3 eggs. 35 years of savings. Gone. This happened to millions of people. Pensions became worthless. Life insurance policies paid out in money that couldn't buy a soda. Bank accounts with thousands of dollars couldn't buy lunch. An entire generation's wealth was obliterated in months. The barter economy. When money becomes worthless, people get creative. Zimbabwe's economy collapsed into a primitive barter system. People traded eggs for gasoline, vegetables for medicine, clothing for school fees. Labor for food doctors were paid in chickens and corn. Teachers accepted vegetables as tuition. International aid agencies paid their local staff in rice and cooking oil instead of money. The country had effectively gone backward 10,000 years economically. Instead of a modern currency, they were trading goods like ancient civilizations. But it gets worse. The social collapse. Hyperinflation doesn't just destroy money, it destroys society. Crime exploded. When people are starving, morality becomes a luxury. Hospitals ran out of medicine. Thousands died from preventable diseases. Schools closed because teachers couldn't afford to come to work. Cholera outbreaks killed thousands because the water treatment system collapsed. The government couldn't afford the chemicals. The average life expectancy dropped from 60 years to 36 years. Think about that. 36 years old. The average life expectancy. And here's the cruelest part. The shelves weren't actually empty. If you had US dollars or South African rand, you could buy anything. Shops had food and supplies. But if all you had was Zimbabwe dollars, worthless paper, you watched your children go hungry while looking at shelves full of food you couldn't afford. This is what the death of money actually looks like. By early 2009, the government finally admitted defeat. They officially abandoned the Zimbabwe dollar, just stopped using it entirely. The country now uses foreign currencies, US dollars, South African rand, British pounds, whatever people have. Zimbabwe became one of the only countries in the world with no official currency of its own. Those $100 trillion bills? Collector's items. People sell them to tourists and on eBay for a few bucks as souvenirs of economic catastrophe. The most tragic joke in monetary history. The recovery and lessons. Today, Zimbabwe is slowly recovering. The economy stabilized once they stopped printing money, but the scars remain. An entire generation lost their savings. Businesses that took decades to build vanished. Trust in government and institutions was shattered. And Robert Mugabe? He stayed in power until 2017, 37 years total, before finally being forced out. So what can we learn from this? Lesson 1. You cannot print your way to prosperity. Every government that's tried has failed. Lesson 2. Economic destruction happens faster than you think. Zimbabwe went from stable to catastrophic in less than a decade. Lesson 3. The people who suffer most are always ordinary citizens. The political elites who caused the crisis? They had foreign bank accounts and foreign currency. They were fine. Lesson 4. Once hyperinflation starts, it's almost impossible to stop without abandoning the currency entirely. Could it happen again? Here's the scary part. Zimbabwe isn't unique. Germany in 1923, Hungary in 1946, Yugoslavia in 1994, Venezuela right now. The same pattern, the same mistakes, the same devastation. And with modern digital printing presses, it could happen even faster today. Every time a government prints money to solve its problems, economists point to Zimbabwe and say, "Don't do this." But desperation makes people forget history. This $100 trillion bill is a warning from history. It's proof that money is only worth something because we agree it is. It's a reminder that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. And it's evidence that no matter how desperate things get, printing money is never the answer. Zimbabwe learned this lesson the hardest way possible. Let's hope the rest of the world was paying attention. If this story shocked you, hit that subscribe button. We're diving into more economic disasters, financial collapses, and the moments when everything went wrong. Because those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.